He built an empire on silence and fear. She left him 3 years ago with a secret he never saw coming. Now, on Christmas Eve, she stands at his door, with 3 children who have his eyes. This is the night that will destroy everything he thought he knew about power and love. This is the heir's reckoning. If you love stories where mafia kings fall harder than empires crumble, the snow fell like confessions over the Kim estate. Heavy, silent, relentless. Jae-won Kim stood at the floor-to-ceiling window of his study, watching the city below disappear beneath white. Manhattan glittered in the distance, unaware that the man who controlled half its underground breathed against cold glass, alone. 32 years old, heir to the most feared Korean crime family in America. Untouchable. And so unbearably alone it felt like drowning in air. Christmas Eve meant nothing to him. It was another night. Another empire to maintain. Another mask to wear until his face forgot what softness felt like. His phone buzzed. He ignored it. The whiskey in his hand was older than most of his enemies' ambitions. He drank it like medicine. "Sir." His head of security, Min-ho, appeared in the doorway. 60 years old, loyal since Jae-won was a child, the only man allowed to enter unannounced. "There's someone at the gate. Tell them we're closed for the holiday." Jae-won didn't turn around. "She said you'd say that." Something in Min-ho's voice made him pause. Not fear, not surprise. Something else, something older. Recognition. "Who is it?" Min-ho hesitated. In 20 years, he'd never hesitated. "Naima Okafor, sir." The glass slipped from Jae-won's hand. It didn't shatter, just rolled across the Persian rug, spilling amber like blood. That name was 3 years of silence. 3 years of forcing himself not to search for her. 3 years of building walls so high he forgot what the sky looked like. "Sir, she's not alone." Jae-won finally turned. His face was stone, but his hands were shaking. "What do you mean?" "She has children with her. 3 of them, very young." The room tilted. "No. Send them away." "Sir?" "I said send them away." His voice could have cut steel. Min-ho didn't move. "With respect, sir, you should see this yourself." The security monitors showed her clearly. Naima, 3 years older, still impossibly beautiful. Her dark skin luminous even in the harsh security lights, her hair wrapped in a crimson scarf that matched her coat. She stood like she always had, rooted, unshakable, a tree that bent for no storm. And beside her, Jae-won's breath stopped. 3 children, small, bundled in matching navy coats. They couldn't have been more than 3 years old. 2 boys, 1 girl, and their faces. Oh God, their faces. He saw his own eyes staring back at him through the camera. His mother's nose, his father's sharp chin. The Kim bloodline stamped on 3 small souls who shifted nervously in the snow, holding onto Naima's hands like anchors. How long has she been standing there? His voice was barely a whisper. 40 minutes, sir. She won't leave. She keeps saying you need to know. Jae-won's mind was screaming. Triplets. His triplets. Children he never knew existed because he'd pushed her away so violently she must have run with her secret, rather than face him again. 3 years ago, he'd ended things the only way he knew how, with cruelty designed to make her hate him, to keep her safe, to make sure she never came back to a world that devoured everything soft. He'd told her she was nothing, that she'd been a distraction, that women like her didn't belong in his world. He'd watched her walk away with tears streaming down her face, and he'd locked the door behind her and broken every piece of furniture in his office because hurting her hurt worse than every bullet wound he'd ever taken. But she'd been pregnant, and she'd never told him. "Open the gate," he heard himself say. "Sir? Open the gate. Bring them to the main hall. Clear everyone out. No staff, no guards. Just bring them in." She stepped into his home like a queen entering enemy territory, head high, eyes steady. The children pressed against her sides, their small hands gripping her coat. Jae-won stood at the top of the marble staircase, looking down at the 4 of them. He'd faced rival families, federal agents, men who wanted him dead. He'd never been afraid. Until now. Naima. Her name felt like broken glass in his mouth. She didn't flinch. Jae-won. God, her voice. Still warm honey in summer storms. Still the only sound that ever made him feel human. "You shouldn't be here. I know." "I told you." I remember what you told me. Her eyes flashed. I remember every word. Silence stretched between them like an ocean. One of the boys, the one with Jaewon's exact frown, tugged on Naima's sleeve. Mama, I'm cold. Mama. The word was a bullet. Jaewon descended the stairs slowly. Each step echoed in the empty hall. The children watched him with wide, uncertain eyes. He stopped 3 feet away. Up close, the resemblance was staggering. Undeniable. These were his children. His blood. His legacy standing in small bodies that smelled like baby shampoo and innocence. Why now? His voice cracked. Why tonight? Naima's jaw tightened. Because they started asking questions I couldn't answer anymore. Because they deserve to know their father exists. Because... She exhaled slowly. Because 3 years was long enough to hate you. And I'm tired of carrying it alone. You never told me. You never gave me the chance. Her voice broke just for a second before she reined it back in. You threw me away like I was nothing, Jaewon. You looked at me with those cold eyes and you made me feel like loving you was the stupidest thing I'd ever done. So yes, I left. And yes, I kept them from you. Because I didn't know if you'd see them as children, or as liabilities. The accusation hung in the air. He wanted to tell her she was wrong. But they both knew she wasn't. The little girl, her eyes were lighter than her brother's, more brown than black, stepped forward suddenly. She tilted her head, studying him with unnerving intensity. Are you our daddy? 6 words. They broke him completely. Jaewon had forgotten how to breathe. The little girl stood before him, small and fearless, waiting for an answer that would change everything. Behind her, Naima's face was carefully blank, but he knew her tells. The slight tension in her shoulders. The way her fingers curled protectively around the boy's hands. She was ready to run if he said the wrong thing. He'd spent 3 years imagining what he'd say if he ever saw her again. He'd rehearsed apologies he'd never deliver. Explanations that sounded like excuses. Justifications for why he'd destroyed the only good thing in his life. But nothing prepared him for this. For 3 small faces waiting for him to claim them or deny them. Yes. The word came out rough, unfamiliar. Yes, I'm your father. The girl smiled. It was his mother's smile, the one he'd only seen in photographs from before the family business consumed her humanity. Mama said you were busy being important. Are you done now? Something in his chest cracked open. Naima closed her eyes briefly as if the innocence of the question caused her physical pain. Seo Jun. She spoke gently to the girl. That's enough questions for now. But Mama? Enough, baby. The boys, identical in every way except one had a small scar above his left eyebrow, remained silent, watching him with the wariness of children who'd learned too young to read danger in a room. Jaewon knew that look. He'd worn it himself at their age. They're cold, he said finally. There are rooms upstairs, heated, safe, you can. You should stay. Tonight, at least. Naima's eyes narrowed. We're not here for your charity. Then why are you here? Because they're yours. Because you have a right to know they exist. But if you think for 1 second I'm going to let you... I'm not going to hurt them. His voice was steel wrapped in desperation. Or you, never you. You already did. The words were a knife between his ribs. She was right. He had hurt her. Deliberately. Viciously. Because men in his position didn't get to keep the things they loved. They only got to watch them die or become corrupted. So he'd killed it first. Killed them first. Except she'd been carrying his children. And now those children stood in his hallway, tracking snow onto marble floors that had seen blood more often than innocence. How? His voice was barely audible. How did you manage alone? Naima's laugh was bitter. You think being alone is the hard part? Try explaining to 3 toddlers why their father doesn't exist. Try working double shifts while pregnant with triplets because you're too proud to ask for help from a man who made it clear you meant nothing. Try... She stopped abruptly. The boys were watching her with worried expressions. Seo Jun tugged on her coat again. Mama, don't be sad. Naima knelt, gathering all 3 children close. I'm not sad, baby. I'm just... tired. Jaewon watched her hold them. Watched the way they folded into her like she was their entire world. Because she was. She'd been their world for 3 years while he'd been playing king of an empire built on fear. Minho. He didn't raise his voice, but his security chief materialized from the shadows immediately. Prepare the east wing, 4 rooms, connecting, full security detail at a distance. They're not to be disturbed or watched. And send for Dr. Yoon. I want the children examined. Just to make sure they're healthy. Naima stood sharply. They're fine. We didn't come here for your doctors or your money or... They're my children. For the first time, his voice carried the full weight of his authority. Not cruel, not cold, just absolute. And I will make sure they're cared for. You don't have to forgive me, Naima. You don't have to stay beyond tonight if you don't want to. But while you're under my roof, you and they will have everything I can provide. That's not negotiable. Their eyes locked. 3 years ago, she would have argued, would have thrown his commands back in his face with that fire that made him fall for her in the first place. But 3 years of raising triplets alone had taught her to pick her battles. Fine, she said quietly. One night. One night. He agreed. Both of them knew it was a lie. The east wing of the Kim estate was designed for family, the kind of family Jaewon's parents had dreamed of before the business ate them alive. Warm colors, soft carpets, windows that looked out over gardens instead of guard towers. It had sat empty for 15 years. Now it filled with the sound of children's laughter. Seo-jun had discovered the piano in the sitting room and was pressing keys with delighted chaos. The boys, Min-jun and Tae-jun, Naima had told him quietly, were exploring with the careful curiosity of kids who'd learned not to touch things that didn't belong to them. Jaewon stood in the doorway watching. Naima was helping them out of their coats, murmuring soft instructions. She moved with the practiced efficiency of a mother who'd done this 1,000 times alone. Guilt was a living thing in his chest. They look like you, she said without turning around. They have your smile, your strength. She glanced at him. You don't know anything about my strength. I know you survived 3 years raising my children alone because I was too much of a coward to let you stay. That made her pause. You weren't a coward. You were cruel. There's a difference. Is there? Seo-jun ran over suddenly, grabbing his hand with sticky fingers. Daddy, come see the piano. Daddy? He looked down at her, at this small, perfect human who shared his blood, and felt his carefully constructed world shift on its axis. I don't play, he managed. Mama does. Mama plays really good. Naima's expression softened slightly. Seo-jun, leave him alone. He's busy. But he said he's not busy anymore. The girl's logic was irrefutable. Jaewon let himself be pulled toward the piano. Seo-jun climbed onto the bench and started banging keys again with joyful abandon. She has your determination, Naima said quietly behind him, and your inability to take no for an answer. Almost, she smiled. The boys approached cautiously. Min-jun, the one with the scar, spoke first. His voice was small. Are you going to make Mama cry again? The question hit like a fist. Jaewon knelt, bringing himself to their eye level. No, I'm not. You did before. Mama cries sometimes at night when she thinks we're sleeping. Naima's sharp intake of breath told him she hadn't known they'd heard. I know, Jaewon said seriously. I hurt your mother very badly. And I'm sorry. I can't fix the past. But I can promise you this. While you're here, you're safe. All of you. That's what fathers do. They keep their families safe. Tae-jun, the quieter twin, studied him with eyes that saw too much. Do you have a gun? Jesus. Tae-jun! Naima moved forward quickly, but Jaewon held up a hand. It's okay. He should know the truth. He looked at the boy steadily. Yes, I have guns, because there are people who don't like me, and I have to protect what's mine. But I would never hurt you, or your brothers, or your mother. Do you understand? Tae-jun nodded slowly. Min-jun stepped closer. Can we see your house? Min-jun, we're not... Naima started. Yes, Jaewon interrupted. Yes, you can see the house. Tomorrow. Tonight you should rest. It's late. But it's Christmas Eve, Seo-jun protested. We have to wait for Santa. Santa Claus in the Kim estate. The absurdity almost made him laugh. Then we'll wait, he heard himself say. We'll wait together. Naima looked at him like he'd spoken a foreign language. Maybe he had. Maybe this softness, this presence, this attempting to be something other than the heir, was the most foreign language he'd ever tried to learn. Midnight found Jaewon in the hallway outside the children's rooms. They'd finally fallen asleep an hour ago, after Naima had read them 3 stories and sung a lullaby in Igbo, that made his chest ache with longing for something he'd never had. Family. Real family. Not the blood-soaked dynasty his father had built. Dr. Yoon had examined them discreetly. All three were healthy, bright, a little underweight, but nothing concerning. The doctor had given him a long look before leaving, one that said, "Be careful with this gift." Now the house was silent except for the snow against the windows. Naima emerged from the children's room, closing the door with practiced quiet. She startled when she saw him. "You're still here. It's my house. You know what I mean." She crossed her arms. Even exhausted, even wary, she was the most beautiful thing he'd ever seen. "Don't you have an empire to run, people to terrify?" "The empire can wait." It never waited before. The accusation was fair. They stood in the dim hallway, 3 years of silence between them heavier than the snow outside. "Why didn't you tell me?" His voice was raw. "When you found out you were pregnant, why didn't you come to me?" Naima's laugh was hollow. "Come to you? Jaewon, you threw me out like garbage. You told me I was a mistake. A distraction you couldn't afford. You looked at me with eyes so cold I thought I'd imagined every warm moment we'd ever shared. I was trying to protect you. By destroying me?" Her voice rose slightly, then dropped, mindful of the sleeping children. "You don't get to do that. You don't get to hurt someone and call it protection. You think I don't know that?" He stepped closer. "You think I don't know exactly how much damage I did? I've relived that night every day for 3 years. Every word I said. Every way I made you feel worthless when you were the only worthwhile thing in my entire existence." She shook her head. "Pretty words don't fix this." "I know. Nothing fixes this. But those children, our children, they deserved better than what we gave them. They deserved a father. They had me. And you were enough. You were more than enough. But Naima..." His hand lifted, almost touching her face before he caught himself. "You shouldn't have had to be everything alone." Her eyes glistened. "You made your choice 3 years ago. I made the wrong choice. I thought keeping you away from my world was love. I thought if you hated me, you'd be safe. I didn't know that I was carrying pieces of you inside me." She pressed a hand to her stomach, as if remembering. "Finding out I was pregnant was the worst and best moment of my life. Worst because the man I loved had just shattered me. Best because I realized I'd have something of you even if I couldn't have you." Jaewon's control fractured. "I never stopped." "Don't." She held up a hand. "Don't say it. Don't make this harder than it is." "Harder than what? Than walking away again? Because that's what I'm going to do. Tomorrow we'll leave. You've met them now. You know they exist. We can figure out visitation, support, whatever. But I'm not staying in your world, Jaewon. I survived leaving it once. I won't risk getting pulled back in. What if I asked you to stay? You don't get to ask me anything. What if I begged?" That stopped her. The heir of the Kim family didn't beg, didn't plead, didn't show weakness. But he wasn't the heir right now. He was just a man who'd lost everything that mattered and found it again standing in his hallway, wearing his dead mother's fury and his own regret. "Naima, please." The word was broken glass. "I know I don't deserve it. I know I ruined everything. But those children, our children, they need... What? Your money? Your name? Your world of guns and blood and... They need their father." His voice cracked. "And maybe I need them too. Maybe I need to learn how to be something other than this." He gestured at himself, at the house, at the empire that suddenly felt like a prison. "Maybe they're the only chance I have at becoming someone worth knowing." She stared at him. Really stared. "You think children fix broken men?" "No, but maybe. Maybe they give broken men a reason to fix themselves." Silence stretched. Then Seojun's small voice came from behind the door. "Mama? I heard voices. Is everything okay?" The spell broke. Naima turned back to the door. "Everything's fine, baby. Go back to sleep. Is Daddy still here?" "Daddy?" The word still felt like a miracle and a curse combined. "Yes," Naima said quietly. "He's still here." "Good. I like him." When Naima turned back, her eyes were swimming with unshed tears. "You can't do this," she whispered. "You can't make them love you and then disappear when your world demands it. You can't be half a father. Either you're all in or you're not in at all, Because I won't let you break their hearts the way you broke mine. Jaewon held her gaze. I'm all in. You say that now. I've never been more certain of anything in my life. Your family can adjust. My father built an empire on fear. Maybe it's time I built something else. Something that doesn't require destroying everything good to maintain power. That's naive. Maybe. Or maybe having something worth protecting changes everything. She searched his face, looking for the lie, the crack, the moment he'd revert to the cold, calculating heir who'd thrown her away. He let her look. He had nothing left to hide. 1 week, she said finally. What? 1 week. We stay 1 week. You want to prove you're serious? Prove you can be present? Then be present. For 7 days. No disappearing into your office. No urgent business. No putting the empire first. You want to be their father? Then be their father. It was a test. They both knew it. In his world, a week was an eternity. A week away from direct oversight meant vulnerabilities. Meant rivals sensing weakness. Meant risking everything he'd built. But when he looked at her, at the mother of his children standing in his hallway demanding he be better, the choice was surprisingly simple. 1 week, he agreed. And if you fail, if you hurt them even once, we're gone. Forever. No second chances. I understand. Do you? Her voice was fierce. Because this isn't a game, Jaewon. These are real children with real feelings. They've already spent 3 years without you. If you can't commit, tell me now. Let me take them home and we'll forget this ever happened. I can't. You can't what? Forget this happened. Forget they exist. Forget you're standing here looking at me like there might still be something worth saving in who I am. He moved closer, careful not to crowd her. 1 week, 7 days. I'll prove to you I can be what they need, what you all need. And after that we figure it out, together, as a family. We're not a family. We could be. The vulnerability in his voice was new, raw, real. Naima closed her eyes. Tomorrow morning. We start tomorrow. Tomorrow, he agreed. She turned to go back into the room, paused at the door. Jaewon? Yes? If you make me regret this, if you make them regret this, there's nowhere you can hide that I won't find you, empire or not. He believed her absolutely. I know. She disappeared into the room. He stood alone in the hallway, listening to her settling the children back to sleep. And for the first time in 3 years, he felt something other than the cold weight of his crown. He felt possibility, and terror, and hope. Outside, the snow continued to fall, covering the city in white, erasing old tracks, making space for new ones. Tomorrow, he thought. Tomorrow, everything changes. He just had to pray he was strong enough to deserve the chance. Morning came too bright. Jaewon had forgotten what it felt like to sleep, really sleep, without the weight of constant vigilance. But sometime around 4 a.m., sitting in the chair outside the children's rooms, exhaustion had finally claimed him. He woke to small hands shaking his shoulder. Daddy, wake up. Seojun's face was inches from his, her breath smelling like sleep and innocence. Behind her, the twins watched with matching expressions of curiosity. Mama says we can't have breakfast until you wake up, Minjun informed him seriously. Jaewon blinked, disoriented. The hallway was flooded with winter sunlight. His neck ached from the awkward angle. For a moment, he couldn't remember why he was sleeping in a chair instead of his bed. Then it all came rushing back. His children. Naima. The impossible second chance he'd been given. What time is it? His voice was rough. 8:30, Taejun said quietly. Mama usually makes us breakfast at 8, but she said this is your house, so we have to wait for you. 8:30. He couldn't remember the last time he'd slept past 6. Where is your mother? In the kitchen. She said she doesn't trust your chef people. Seojun giggled. She's making pancakes. Naima, in his kitchen. Making pancakes for their children on Christmas morning. The domesticity of it should have felt foreign. Instead, it felt like the most natural thing in the world. He stood, joints protesting. Then we shouldn't keep her waiting. The children grabbed his hands. Seojun on the left, Minjun on the right, Taejun walking slightly ahead, and led him through hallways that suddenly felt less like a fortress and more like a home. The kitchen was a war zone. Flour dusted every surface. Batter dripped from the counter. Naima stood at the stove, her hair wrapped in a bright yellow scarf, wearing one of his dress shirts over her clothes like a makeshift apron. She was humming something low and melodic as she flipped pancakes with the concentration of a surgeon. She looked beautiful, chaotic, real. Everything his pristine, controlled world wasn't. "Mama made a mess," Seo-jun announced cheerfully. Naima turned, saw him, and her expression shuddered slightly. "You're awake." "I'm awake." "The children insisted on waiting for you. I told them we could eat without— I want to eat with them." He moved into the kitchen, hyper-aware of the children watching every interaction. "With all of you." She studied him for a long moment, then nodded toward the table. "Sit." "They're almost ready." He'd never been dismissed in his own kitchen before. It should have irritated him. Instead, he found himself obeying, sitting at the large wooden table while his children scrambled into chairs around him. They moved with the practiced choreography of a family unit that had existed without him. The pang of loss was sharp. "Do you like pancakes, Daddy?" Seo-jun asked, swinging her legs. Yes, I like pancakes. Mama makes the best ones. She puts vanilla in them. And sometimes chocolate chips, but we don't have those here because your kitchen is weird." "Seo-jun," Naima warned without turning around. "Manners." "Sorry, your kitchen is weird, please." Jaewon couldn't stop the smile. "What's weird about it?" "Everything is too shiny, and there's no pictures on the fridge. Mama says fridges are for pictures and magnets from places you've been. Yours doesn't have any." Because he'd never kept personal items anywhere. Because sentimentality was vulnerability. Because the heir didn't decorate refrigerators. "You're right," he said quietly. "It is weird. Maybe we can fix that." Taejun looked skeptical. "How?" "Well, we could take pictures. Today. Of all of us. And put them on the fridge." The twins exchanged glances. Min-jun spoke carefully. "You want pictures of us?" The question broke something in him. What kind of life had they lived where a father wanting pictures of his children was surprising? What kind of man had he been that this was shocking? "Yes," he said firmly. "I want pictures. Lots of them. Of you. Of your mother. Of us together." Naima set a plate of pancakes on the table with slightly more force than necessary. "Don't make promises you can't keep." "I'm not." "You say that now. Wait until someone calls about business, until the empire needs you. Until being daddy becomes inconvenient." The children had gone very quiet, sensing the tension. Jaewon kept his voice even. "I gave you my word. 1 week. No empire. No business. Just us. And you think you can just turn it off? The phones, the responsibilities, the people who depend on you?" "I think," he said slowly, "that for 3 years my most important responsibility has been walking around without me. I think it's time I got my priorities straight." She wanted to argue. He could see it in the set of her jaw, the fire in her eyes. But not in front of the children. So instead, she sat down and started cutting pancakes into small pieces for Seo-jun. They ate in careful silence for a few minutes. The pancakes were perfect, fluffy, sweet, everything his private chef's precise creations weren't. They tasted like home. "These are really good," he said honestly. Naima didn't look up. "Thank you." "Mama learned from her mama," Min-jun offered. "Grandma Chioma makes them even better, but don't tell Mama that." "I won't tell," Jaewon promised solemnly. "Grandma lives far away," Seo-jun added sadly. "In Nigeria. We don't get to see her much because flying is expensive." Another knife wound. Another reminder of how she'd struggled while he sat in his mansion counting money that meant nothing. "Maybe we can change that," he said quietly. Naima's head snapped up. "Don't." "Don't what?" "Don't throw money at problems like that fixes them. Don't make grand gestures you'll forget about next week." "I'm not—" "Yes, you are. That's what people like you do. You see a problem, you throw resources at it, you feel better about yourself. But money doesn't replace presence, Jaewon. It doesn't replace showing up." She was right, and it stung. "Then teach me," he said. "Teach me how to show up." The vulnerability in his voice seemed to catch her off guard. Taejun broke the tension. "Can we see the rest of the house now? You promised." Grateful for the interruption, Jaewon nodded. "I did promise, as soon as we're done eating." "And can we play in the snow?" Seo-jun bounced in her seat. "Please, please, please." "If your mother says it's okay." 3 small faces turned to Naima with pleading eyes. She sighed. Fine, but you have to wear proper coats and hats and gloves and scarves, we know, Mama. They chorused in unison. The synchronization made both adults smile despite themselves. Maybe, Jaewon thought, this was what healing looked like. Small moments, shared smiles. Pancakes on Christmas morning with flour on every surface, and children who wanted to play in the snow. Maybe salvation wasn't dramatic. Maybe it was just this. The Kim estate had 16 rooms, 4 wings, and enough space to house a small army. The children treated it like the world's best playground. They ran through hallways with marble floors that echoed their laughter. They discovered the library and gasped at the floor-to-ceiling books. They found the indoor pool and begged to swim later. They were enchanted by everything, and their wonder reminded Jaewon of how cold and empty his home had become. Naima walked beside him, keeping a careful distance but watching him watch the children. They like it here, she said quietly. They deserve places like this. Deserve better than what I... Stop. She held up a hand. Stop apologizing. Stop drowning in guilt. If you want to prove something, prove it through action, not words. What action do you want? She was quiet for a long moment. Then, be present. Really present. Not just physically here, but emotionally available. That's what they need. What they've never had. I don't know how to do that. The admission cost him. Men in his position didn't admit weakness, but Naima didn't mock him. Instead, her expression softened slightly. Neither did I at first. You learn, you mess up, you try again. That's parenting. You make it look easy. It's not. It's the hardest thing I've ever done. And I've done it alone for 3 years, so forgive me if I'm skeptical about your ability to stick around when it gets difficult. Before he could respond, Seojun called out from down the hall. Daddy, there's a room with swords on the wall. Real swords. His study, where he kept his father's collection of antique weapons, not exactly child-friendly. He and Naima rushed down the hall. The children stood in the doorway of his private study, staring wide-eyed at the display of Korean blades mounted on the wall. Can we touch them? Minjun asked. No. Both adults said simultaneously. Jaewon knelt beside them. Those swords are very old, and very sharp. They're not toys. Why do you have swords? Taejun asked with his usual quiet intensity. How to explain? How to tell 3-year-olds that their father came from a world where weapons weren't decorative? They belonged to my father, he said carefully, and his father before him. In our family, they represent strength and protection. Are you strong, Daddy? Seojun looked up at him with complete trust. I try to be. Mama's strong, Minjun declared. She can carry all 3 of us at the same time. Your mama is the strongest person I've ever met, Jaewon said, looking at Naima. She looked away, but not before he saw the shimmer in her eyes. Come on, she said briskly. Let's see the rest of the house, and then we can play outside before it gets too cold. As they moved to leave, Taejun hung back. He stared at the swords with an expression far too serious for his age. Taejun? Jaewon approached carefully. What's wrong? The boy looked up at him. Do people try to hurt you? Is that why you have swords? Jesus, this child saw too much. Jaewon crouched down to his level. Sometimes, yes, my job can be dangerous, but I'm very careful, and I have people who help keep me safe. Who keeps Mama safe? The question was a gut punch. I do, Jaewon said firmly. From now on, I keep all of you safe. That's my job now, the most important one I have. Taejun studied him with ancient eyes. Then slowly, he nodded. It felt like passing a test he hadn't known he was taking. The gardens behind the Kim estate were designed for perfection, not chaos. Until today. Jaewon watched from the terrace as his children destroyed 3 years of careful landscaping, and he'd never been happier about destruction in his life. They were building a snowman. Or trying to. Minjun kept making the middle too small. Seojun insisted on using oversized sticks for arms. Taejun attempted architectural precision that kept collapsing. Naima sat on a bench nearby, wrapped in a dark green coat. Cashmere, probably his mother's. She watched the children with an expression he couldn't read. Soft, guarded, hopeful, and terrified. He brought her tea, Earl Grey, the way she used to drink it. She looked surprised, he remembered. Thank you, she murmured, accepting the cup. He sat beside her, maintaining distance. They're happy. Children find joy in small things. Adults complicate everything. Is that what I did? You obliterated things. There's a difference. Fair. They watched their children play in comfortable silence. The scene was surreal. Everything his life had never been. What was it like? He asked quietly. Being pregnant? Raising them alone? Naima was quiet so long he thought she wouldn't answer. Terrifying. I found out 2 weeks after we ended. Took 6 tests because I couldn't believe it. Then cried for 3 days. His hands clenched. I thought about telling you every day, but I remembered your face when you threw me out. I thought, what if he sees them as mistakes? I didn't know that. All I knew was the man I loved had become someone capable of cutting me out like I never mattered. Each word was a blade. The pregnancy was hard. Triplets usually are. They came 6 weeks early. So tiny I was terrified to hold them. 2 weeks in NICU watching them breathe, wondering how I'd ever be enough. Her voice caught. You are enough. More than enough. Where were you when Minjun had colic and screamed for 6 hours? When Seojun got pneumonia and I couldn't afford hospital bills? When Taejun stopped talking for 3 months after kids made fun of him for not having a daddy? Jaewon felt eviscerated. You don't get to show up now and act like that erases 3 years. You don't get to play hero when I survived the war. I know. I can't change the past. But let me be here for the future. Let me learn. Why should I trust you? You shouldn't, but I'm asking for the chance to earn it. Seojun ran over, cheeks red from cold. Daddy, Mama, come see our snowman. They walked over together, not touching but side by side, examining the world's most lopsided snowman. He's perfect, Jaewon said. He's falling apart, Minjun observed. That's what makes him perfect. Imperfect but still standing. That takes real strength. Taejun looked up. Like you? Too perceptive. Like all of us, Jaewon said quietly. A snowball hit his shoulder. He turned to find Seojun giggling, already packing another one. Did you just... Another snowball. This one hit his chest. The twins exchanged glances, then started making ammunition. Jaewon looked at Naima. She was trying not to smile. You're going to let them attack me? You're the one who said you wanted to be present. Her eyes glinted. Welcome to parenting. He didn't think, just scooped up snow and threw it. It hit Minjun square in the chest. The boy froze, shocked. Then war erupted. For 15 minutes, the heir to the Kim Empire forgot about power and control and carefully maintained images. He dove behind snow-covered bushes with his children. He got pelted repeatedly by surprisingly accurate 3-year-olds. He heard Naima's laugh, real, unguarded, beautiful, when Seojun landed a perfect headshot. When they finally collapsed in the snow, breathless and soaked, the children piled on top of him like puppies. We won, Seojun declared. You definitely won, he agreed, looking up at the gray winter sky with small bodies warm against his chest. This, he thought, this is what I was missing. Not power, not fear, not empire. This. That night, after baths and dinner and 3 bedtime stories, the children finally slept. Jaewon found Naima in the sitting room, staring at the fireplace. They wore you out, she said without turning. In the best way. Don't get used to it. This is borrowed time. In 6 days, we go home. What if I don't want you to? She turned then. Want doesn't matter. This isn't real life, Jaewon. This is a fantasy. A week in a mansion playing house. Real life is bills and sick kids and exhaustion and no staff to make everything perfect. Then let me see real life. Let me be part of it. You don't know what you're asking. So teach me. She stood, crossed to where he sat. You think love is enough? You think good intentions erase 3 years? No, but it's a start. She stared at him, searching for the lie, the moment he'd retreat into coldness. Instead, she found only truth. 1 week, she whispered. Don't waste it. I won't. She left him alone with the fire and the weight of second chances. Outside, snow continued falling, covering old tracks, making space for new ones. The week passed like water through desperate fingers. Days blurred into moments Jaewon tried desperately to memorize. Seojun teaching him how to braid hair, badly. Taejun quietly holding his hand during a thunderstorm. Minjun asking if Daddy could stay forever. Forever. The word terrified and intoxicated him. On the 6th day, Naima found him in his study, staring at his phone. He'd kept his word. No calls, no business, no empire. But tomorrow was day 7. Tomorrow he had to choose. Regretting it yet? She leaned against the doorframe. Never. Your people have called 83 times. Minho told me. The empire survived without me before. It will survive longer. She moved into the room closer than she'd been all week. What are you saying? I'm saying I choose them. Choose you. Choose this. He gestured vaguely at everything the week had been. Power doesn't mean anything if I'm alone at the top. You can't just walk away from who you are. No. But I can change what that means. My father built his empire on fear. Maybe I build mine on something else. On what? Family. Love. Things worth more than control. Naima's eyes glistened. Pretty words. I mean them. Prove it. So he did. He called Minho, gave orders that sent shockwaves through his organization, delegated power, restructured operations, created space in his life for something other than the endless pursuit of dominance. It wasn't abdication. It was evolution. When he finished, Naima was watching him with an expression he couldn't read. You're serious. I've never been more serious about anything. The Empire won't like it. The Empire will adjust, or it won't. Either way, I'm done choosing it over what matters. She moved closer. Close enough he could smell her perfume. Something warm and spiced he'd missed for 3 years. This doesn't fix everything, she whispered. I know. We have years of pain to work through. I know that too. But maybe. She touched his face, tentative, testing. Maybe we can try. He covered her hand with his. Stay, not just another week. Stay and let me prove I can be what you need. What they need. And if you fail, then you leave. And I spend the rest of my life trying to be worthy of the second chance you gave me. She studied him for a long moment. Then slowly she smiled. It was sunrise after endless night. 1 month, she said. We stay 1 month. You keep proving yourself. And we see. 1 month, he agreed. The kiss, when it came, tasted like forgiveness and hope and the terrifying possibility of redemption. Christmas morning, 1 year later, found J1 in his kitchen making pancakes while 3 4-year-olds ran circles around him. The fridge was covered in pictures. Magnets from places they'd traveled, crayon drawings of stick figure families that always included him now. Naima walked in, wearing his shirt and a smile that still made his heart stop. You're burning them, she observed. I'm learning. Learning is just a kind word for failure. Then I'm excellently learning. He flipped a completely charred pancake. She laughed. That sound he'd once thought he'd lost forever, and took over. Behind them, their children played with the casual confidence of kids who'd never doubted they were loved. The empire still existed. Jae-won still ran it, but differently now, with boundaries. With priorities that had nothing to do with power. He'd learned that real strength wasn't control. It was surrender. Surrender to love, to vulnerability, to the terrifying joy of being someone's father, someone's partner, someone's home. Daddy, you're staring, Seo-jun informed him. I am, he admitted, looking at Naima. Sometimes I still can't believe this is real. It's real, Min-jun assured him seriously. We checked. How did you check? We pinched each other. If we felt it, it's real. Logic of 4-year-olds was flawless. Naima met his eyes across the kitchen, smiled that smile that meant everything had been worth it. The snow fell outside. Inside, there was warmth and laughter, and the kind of chaos that made mansions feel like homes. He'd been an heir to an empire of fear. Now he was just a father learning to make pancakes. It was the greatest promotion of his life. The end.